Невозможно провести when a person wakes up between 3 and 5 in the morning, and their mind is immediately enveloped by heavy thoughts, preventing them from falling back asleep. This phenomenon is not a random coincidence. Many tend to dismiss such awakenings, thereby missing a priceless opportunity for transformation. Meanwhile, one simple action, performed precisely during these truly golden hours, has the potential to fundamentally change a person's entire life. This secret, passed down through generations and well known to our grandmothers, can turn the tide of events for the better. Imagine this unique awakening. Outside, complete silence still reigns. The city is deep in slumber, and one's eyes open, be it precisely at 3 or 4, or sometimes exactly at 5. The silence is so profound that you can hear your own breathing, and at this moment, heavy thoughts begin to flood your mind, one after another, each more bitter than the last. In bygone eras, such occurrences were approached with much more simplicity and wisdom. Our ancestors, our grandmothers, would say, "An angel from heaven has touched you." This is a time designated for quiet prayer, for the most intimate conversation with God, a moment when the soul is pure and open to the divine. However, in the modern world, people often toss and turn, pull the blanket over themselves, frantically search for a sleeping pill on a nightstand, or even worse, start replaying all their troubles, old grievances, and anxieties for their children and grandchildren in their minds like an old film reel. Hour after hour passes until morning, leaving the person utterly exhausted, as if they hadn't slept at all, with a tormenting headache and a heavy heart. Yet, these pre-dawn hours are truly special. They possess a certain magical power, and it is crucial to realize this. This is nothing less than the wisdom of ages, proven by many generations. Waking at this hour is not a punishment, nor a sign of old age or illness. It is, one might say, a unique chance, a kind of invitation to receive what the soul truly desires, what it yearns for. It is precisely at this moment that people typically divide into two completely different types. The first type includes, for example, my old apartment neighbor on Lenina Street, Maria Nikitikna. May she rest in peace. This woman was truly golden, possessing a big and kind heart. All her life, she tirelessly worked like a bee at the Red October textile factory, even from the days when outstanding work and early completion of the 5-year plan in 3 years earned honorary certificates and coveted trips to sanatoriums like Red Dawn's in Yalta. She proudly kept her photo on the Board of Honor, where, young and with a red headscarf, she radiated a smile. However, in her old age, when she woke up at night, she would just lie there, sighing heavily, wiping away tears with her fist, recounting all her sorrows. Sometimes her heart bled for her son Victor. In the turbulent 90s, he opened a cooperative for making stonewashed jeans, and either racketeers would come with irons and soldering irons, or he'd be cheated with rotten fabric supplies. Nothing but debts and nerves. Other times, she worried about her granddaughter Lenachka. A smart and beautiful girl, she excelled in college, but she and her husband lived like cats and dogs, with arguments and shouting every other day. And they had a small child, Igorek. How could he grow up in such a toxic environment? All this was against the backdrop of steadily rising utility bills. She would show that little blue book where the numbers were such that her modest pension, as a shock worker of communist labor, was barely enough. Every month she had to make an agonizing choice. Either buy essential blood pressure medication, the very ones a Soviet doctor had prescribed, or pay the apartment bill in full to avoid accumulating debt. Hour after hour passed like this. Before she knew it, the gray dawn was breaking outside, and in the morning, her blood pressure would be 200. Her hands trembled so much she couldn't hold a teacup. Her chest felt as if it were squeezed in an iron vise. She often complained in a quiet, breaking voice, "I have no strength left. Sleep has completely abandoned me. There's no joy in such a life. I might as well hang myself." Yet, everything could have been completely different if she had realized one simple, yet extremely important truth. Other people, on the contrary, discover this night hour not as a curse or a burden, but as the most precious, most resourceful time. It is a period of absolute silence when one can hear not the usual hum of cars outside, not the drunken shouts of neighbors next door, not the intrusive announcements from the Vremya TV program, but a barely perceptible whisper from oneself, from one's true, deep essence. And it is important not just to hear this inner voice, but to engage in a dialogue with it, to come to an agreement. To come to an agreement with one's life, with one's destiny, with one's soul, if you will. And for this, it should be noted, no expensive imported medicines are required, which are so actively advertised on television and often do more harm than good. Nor are exotic gurus in colorful robes needed, who promise instant enlightenment in exchange for a person's last savings. For this, only one thing is necessary, that very simple action that our wise ancestors knew and practiced without any universities or smart books, passing this knowledge by word of mouth. If a person is determined to transform these night vigils, these hours of longing and anxiety, from an exhausting torment into an inexhaustible source of strength, peace, and vital energy, then they should know that this can not only improve their sleep and calm their nerves. It has the potential to fundamentally change one's attitude towards life, significantly improve well-being, restore the taste for simple joys, and even, yes, you heard correctly, fulfill what a person may have long despaired of and is even afraid to quietly dream about, hiding their desires in the farthest corner of their heart. What many have always considered ordinary insomnia, age-related sleep disturbance, or nervous exhaustion, when a person tosses and turns for hours and thoughts like annoying autumn flies, one worse than the other, buzz and prevent sleep, is actually the quiet but persistent voice of the soul, of the inner self. This voice tries to reach consciousness during the purest, calmest hours, untainted by daytime hustle and noise. Remember, back then, almost every home had large wooden radio receivers. VF, Okin, Latvia, Spidola, with their characteristic green tuning light. And to catch some distant, barely audible foreign radio station, say the BBC or for the bolder ones, Voice of America through the howl of Soviet jamming stations, one had to, deep at night, when the air became especially clear and free from industrial interference, very slowly, very smoothly, and gently turn the tuning knob. Pull it a little faster, press a little harder, and that's it. Only deafening hissing and crackling instead of the desired music or announcer's voice. This is exactly how it is here. The human body and soul, in these pre-dawn, blessed moments, when the rest of the world is still in deep sleep, pick up something very subtle, very important, a special wave from the universe. If a person learns to correctly, carefully tune into this wave, without disrupting this fragile vibration with their fears, anxieties, and endless replaying of daily worries, then they will hear not static and echoes of old grievances, but the quiet, clear, and surprisingly harmonious music of their renewed life, their undying hope. For example, there is a good acquaintance, Pyotr Semyonovich, a brilliant man, a design engineer at the Bolshevik defense plant. All his life, he dedicated himself to drafting tables, slide rules, and strength of materials, striving for precision in everything down to the last micron. He was a man of the old Soviet mold, taciturn, responsible. He had the Order of the Red Banner of Labor for developing some intricate component for a rocket. And then, in retirement, these inexplicable awakenings began for him precisely at 3:30 a.m., as if someone invisible nudged him, like a reveille command in the army. What did he do? First, he would get up, shuffling in his worn-out Soviet-era slippers, and go to the kitchen, where a cold, polka-dotted enamel teapot had been sitting on the burner since evening. He would brew himself the strongest Indian tea with an elephant on the yellow-red packet, the kind that was once a terrible scarcity and obtained only through great connections. Then he would take out a heavy-bound volume of Pravda newspaper from behind the glass door of his bookshelf, from some distant year like 75, where Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev, still young and full of vigor, gave speeches about the inevitable building of communism and a bright future for all workers. And he would sit, head in hands, furrowing his high brow, rereading these yellowed editorials, comparing them to what was happening now outside his Khrushchev-era apartment. And from this bitter comparison, he would grow even more somber and fall into despair. He thought about how his entire life, so necessary and important, his blueprints, his rationalization proposals, had suddenly become useless to anyone. How the enormous pension, which his homeland proudly awarded him, had instantly turned into a pathetic pittance. And his children, whom he had educated and helped stand on their own feet, now called only on major holidays, and even then, somewhat hastily, perfunctorily. With each such pre-dawn vigil, he became more bitter, more irritable, more grumpy. His lower back ached so much that straightening up in the morning was pure agony. His heart would treacherously prickle now and then, radiating a dull pain under his left shoulder blade. And from morning on, a viscous, unpleasant fog would linger in his head, preventing clear thought. Life is worthless, he would grumble to himself, shoving the dusty, bound volume back into the cupboard. And if I die tomorrow, no one will remember me kindly. Then one day, his old university friend, Ivan Zakharovich, with whom he had back in the distant 60s raised virgin lands in Kazakhstan as students in a construction brigade and lived in the same tent, a very wise man who had, as they say, been through fire, water, and brass pipes, advised him one very simple, yet, as it turned out, life-changing thing. Not another pill, not a bitter concoction. It was just one single action that needed to be performed immediately after waking up, without getting out of bed or even opening his eyes. Pyotr Semyonovich initially dismissed the idea, considering it nonsense, old wives' tales, and superstitions. I need to get my high blood pressure under control and calm my arrhythmia, not engage in such foolishness, he grumbled. For all his life, he had been a convinced materialist, raised on the principles of scientific atheism. However, his friend Ivan Zakharovich was persistent and held undeniable authority with Pyotr Semyonovich since their student years. Ivan Zakharovich was older and more experienced. He had gone through the war as a boy, being a son of the regiment. "Just try it," he said softly but firmly. "You have absolutely nothing to lose. Well, you'll spend at most 5 to 10 minutes of your precious time. And what if this is exactly what helps you? It certainly won't make things worse." And Pyotr Semyonovich, driven more by deep respect for his old comrade in arms and his gray hairs than by any belief in a possible result, decided to take the risk. "All right," he sighed, "here goes nothing." He simply closed his eyes as soon as he woke up again in the impenetrable darkness and performed what Ivan Zakharovich had advised him. It seemed like a mere trifle, an ordinary, unremarkable, almost imperceptible action to an outsider, which took him at most 5 to 7 minutes. It was just a drop in a vast ocean compared to the long hours of nocturnal suffering and gloomy anxieties he had experienced before. A week passed, then another, and then a month. And what happened? Pyotr Semyonovich himself didn't notice how he stopped frowning in the mornings and playing his old, worn-out record about how bad everything was in this world. He still woke up around 4 in the morning, but now this time was no longer a torment or a harbinger of another difficult day for him. On the contrary, these minutes became his best, his golden moments of the entire day. These were minutes of absolute peace and astonishing clarity of mind. He became much calmer, more reasonable. Even a soft, barely perceptible smile appeared on his usually stern face. Even his dacha neighbor, Aunt Masha, such a talkative and observant old woman, once remarked to him over the fence, "Pyotr Semyonovich, you look as if you've aged 10 years younger, and your eyes shine in a special way, like a young man's." Can you imagine? And after a couple of months of regular practice, his blood pressure was almost always like a cosmonaut's, 120/80. And the cursed pains in his back and joints, which had tormented him for years and forced him to swallow handfuls of painkillers, became much quieter, almost imperceptible. His children, sensing this amazing change in their father, started visiting him more often, not out of obligation, but just for tea with homemade cherry jam. And most importantly, he returned to his old blueprints, began writing memoirs about his work in the Secret Design Bureau, something he had secretly dreamed of since Khrushchev's time and the famous thaw, but somehow never got around to. He thought it wouldn't be interesting to anyone. Life suddenly and unexpectedly began to play with new, bright, almost forgotten colors for him. And why? All because of this one simple, tiny, almost imperceptible action, which he disciplinedly performed every morning, barely opening his eyes in that pre-dawn ringing silence. If a person often wakes up during these hours and this oppressive feeling of anxiety, this endless carousel of heavy thoughts, is painfully familiar to them, or conversely, they feel some special, inexplicable state at this time, then they should know that this information can be vitally necessary and truly resonate with their soul. This pre-dawn hour is truly interesting. Remember, in distant childhood, if you happen to be awake or woke up very early before sunrise, especially in summer your grandmother's in the village, when you were woken not by an alarm clock or your parents' shouts, but by the first roosters or the lowing of a cow next door. Then a light, milky mist lay over the river. The grass was covered with large drops of dew, as if someone had scattered millions of diamonds. The air smelled of fresh milk, freshly cut hay, and for some reason, smoke from a distant campfire. Birds were just beginning their first, still somewhat timid, but so pure and joyful trills. The air was so fresh and so crystal clear, ringing, and in that moment, there was some inexpressible mystery, a premonition of wonder, magic, the promise of a new bright day. Our ancestors did not say for nothing, generation after generation. The early bird catches the worm, literally. To him who rises early, God gives. But in our urban hustle and pursuit of material wealth, we have completely forgotten what exactly is given. He gives not only to those who jump up at dawn and rush to the factory or field, but also to those who, in this quiet, blessed hour, know how to ask correctly. This does not mean begging with tears and lamentations, nor complaining about cruel fate. No, it simply means correctly attuning oneself, one's soul, one's consciousness to receive all the best that life has prepared for us. Earlier, in Soviet times, which many of us remember very well, there was a poster, a slogan, across the country. Man is the architect of his own happiness, or man is the master of his own destiny. This sounded very proud, very optimistic, but hand on heart, it wasn't always clear how to manage this household, how to forge this happiness, especially when fate constantly threw difficult challenges. Post-war devastation, total scarcity of everything, when one had to stand in multi-hour queues for an ordinary stick of sausage or a jar of instant coffee, humiliating rationing coupons for sugar, butter, and soap. So, this simple thing that a person can and should do upon waking during these magical hours between 3 and 5 in the morning is one of the most accessible and effective keys to becoming a true, full master of one's inner world, of one's emotional state. And when you have peace, harmony, and order within, then any external storms, any life adversities are no longer so terrifying. True, isn't it? It immediately brings to mind the lyrics from a song. The most important thing is the weather at home, and everything else is vanity. This method, this practice, does not require any special titanic efforts, supernatural abilities, or deep esoteric knowledge from a person. It is not difficult. It is natural, like brewing fragrant tea in a faceted glass with an ornate cup holder, which many of us, I am sure, have carefully preserved in our mezzanine since those blessed Soviet times. Remember how pleasant it was to hold it in your hands, warming your frozen fingers, this hot, fragrant tea, especially in a shared sleeping car on a long-distance train, when snow-covered fields and mysterious lights of unfamiliar small stations slowly drifted past the window covered with frosty patterns. This simple morning practice can give a person approximately the same feeling of inner warmth, comfort, and absolute rightness of what is happening. It is elementary in its essence, but its cumulative effect can be compared to the discovery of an entire new, unexplored universe within oneself, that blessed universe where a person can truly receive what they have so long and so passionately dreamed of: peace of mind, robust health for many years, harmony and mutual understanding in the family, inexhaustible strength for new, interesting endeavors and achievements. What does getting everything you want truly mean? It doesn't mean, of course, that tomorrow bags of gold coins will fall from the sky, or that one will magically become 30 years younger instantly, like in the fairy tale of the humpbacked horse. Although, who knows what incredible miracles and hidden reserves our positively tuned body and calm, peaceful spirit hold. Here, it's primarily about that inexpressible quality of life, that fullness of being, which is completely inaccessible when a person is tormented day and night by endless anxieties, chronic illnesses, agonizing insomnia, and a soul-corroding feeling of complete hopelessness and uselessness. It's a real opportunity to meet each new morning, each blessed day, with a clear, bright mind and a light, joyful heart. And yes, precisely so, with a pleasant anticipation of something very good, kind, and bright. And the unshakable foundation for this happy state is laid precisely then, during these special, magical pre-dawn hours, when the vast majority of people are still fast asleep and dreaming. Now we are approaching the most interesting part, the very essence. It is important to understand another critically important thing: how our own restless mind, our ingrained negative thinking habits, our old fears and doubts can actively interfere with this process, throwing a wrench in the works. After all, it's not for nothing that wise people have said for centuries, our biggest and most dangerous enemies are not external circumstances, but our own internal demons, fears, doubts, self-doubt. And it is with these that we need to work a little to sort them out first and foremost, so that the path to fulfilling our most cherished desires is as open and free as possible. These very fears and doubts are like rust on a good tool that our fathers and grandfathers cherished, like thieves who break into a house precisely when it is defenseless in the silence of the night. If you just give them free rein, they will not only stifle all good sprouts, they will steal your most precious possessions: sleep, peace, health. They are especially insidious during these pre-dawn hours between 3 and 5 in the morning. The silence around is so profound that it feels as if the whole world has died. Only the old kitchen clock, the one with pinecone weights that hung in grandmother's village house, relentlessly ticks away the seconds of your wakefulness. And in this deafening silence, every fear, every old resentment that a person tries to ignore during the day, every unresolved problem grows to incredible proportions, becoming louder than a jet plane. Thoughts, like a pack of hungry wolves, pounce on a person. What if my heart gives out? What if my blood pressure spikes again tomorrow? What if my children forget me? Won't help when it becomes unbearable. Where will I go if I can't take care of myself? What if I become a burden to everyone? These are the questions that torment the soul. A deep-seated resentment, often ignored during the day, and every unresolved problem can swell to incredible proportions, becoming louder than a jet engine. Thoughts, like a pack of hungry wolves, could descend upon a person. What if my heart gives out? What if my blood pressure spikes again tomorrow? What if my children forget me? What if they don't help when I'm completely helpless? Where will I go if I can't take care of myself? To that dreadful nursing home where the elderly stare silently at the wall. Painfully familiar, isn't it? Your heart begins to pound frantically in your chest, trying to escape like a bird from a cage. Your breath catches in your throat, a lump forms. And so, instead of a blessed chance for rest, a person receives another cruel torture of insomnia. The most frustrating part: the harder you try to fall asleep, the stronger the tension, and the further sleep slips away. What's surprising, and now confirmed not by shamans but by serious scientists, doctors, and somnologists, sleep specialists who have finally begun to acknowledge it, is that what our ancestors understood intuitively has a real physiological basis. Waking up in the middle of the night itself isn't a catastrophe. It can even be a normal variation. The catastrophe is when a person cannot fall back asleep, when anxiety and negative thoughts take hold. It is anxiety that triggers the production of stress hormones in our bodies, cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones act like an alarm signal for the entire body. They mobilize you, preparing you for fight or flight, but certainly not for sleep. Muscles tense, blood sugar spikes, and the brain works overtime trying to find a way out of non-existent danger. How can one sleep when everything inside screams, "Danger! Don't sleep"? This brings us to the first and most crucial secret to breaking this vicious cycle and reclaiming your stolen sleep. What should you do the moment you open your eyes in that anxious pre-dawn quiet? First and foremost, do not make sudden movements. Do not jump out of bed impulsively. Do not immediately reach for medication that many of us keep on our nightstands as our only salvation. And certainly do not turn on a bright light, which will completely dispel any remaining sleep, or grab the TV remote, or, heaven forbid, your phone to check news that keeps you awake even during the day. No, you simply need to remain still in bed. Yes, just stay warm under your old, familiar, and cozy flannel or cotton blanket, perhaps one your mother even sewed. And the simplest, yet most powerful weapon against nocturnal anxiety: force yourself to smile. Yes, even if you feel like crying from despair, quietly to yourself, to your soul, just physically stretch your lips into a semblance of smile. It costs nothing, does it? But it's the first blow against anxiety. Then, immediately, without giving bad thoughts a second, start recalling something very, very good from your life. The brightest, warmest, most joyful memory you have. Each of us has our own, unique like a fingerprint. Perhaps it was the day when you, a young girl in a white crimpling dress, stood in the local registry office, so simple without today's pomp, next to your shy fiancé in a new suit, and your mother secretly wiped away an unbidden tear with a handkerchief embroidered by her grandmother. Or the unforgettable moment of your firstborn's birth, that tiny, defenseless, wrinkled red bundle that trustingly smacked its lips and sought your breast. Or maybe it was the smell of freshly baked bread from the old Russian oven in your grandmother's village house, where you, city children, were sent for all the long summer holidays, and you woke up to that aroma, anticipating a crispy crust with fresh milk. Or that solemn day when you, a young specialist after college, were handed the order and key to your first own two-room Khrushchev apartment, the one with a tiny kitchen but a much-desired balcony overlooking a green alley, which you had dreamed of for so long and so passionately, while living for years in a cramped communal apartment with a shared kitchen and perpetually discontented neighbors. It doesn't matter what the memory is. The main thing is that it evokes a feeling of warmth, security, quiet joy, and sincere gratitude for having been in your life. Immerse yourself in it completely, with every fiber of your being. Relive it as if watching the most interesting movie. Feel those forgotten smells and hear those distant sounds. Feel those gentle touches, and simply hold that state, that bright cloud within you, for at least 5 to 10 minutes, thinking of nothing else. You might say, what nonsense? What's the connection between old memories and insomnia? The connection is direct. Our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, who didn't know complex words like neurotransmitters or happiness hormones, intuitively understood the great, almost magical power of a positive mindset and gratitude. As you lie down with a thought, so you will rise. A kind word pleases even a cat, let alone a human soul, they used to say. And this is the purest truth, confirmed today by the most serious science. With a conscious act of will, we deliberately shift our attention from a tangle of negative, anxious thoughts to something bright and positive. In the human brain, like a finely tuned mechanism, in response to this impulse, the very hormones of joy and calm, endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, begin to be actively produced. Like a life-giving elixir from a fairy tale about living and dead water, they envelop tense nerve fibers, delicately soothing an overly excited nervous system. This helps normalize a rapid heartbeat and elevated blood pressure, eliminating painful muscle spasms that hinder full relaxation. And this simple, almost childlike action, a gentle smile and immersion in bright memories, is like that miraculous key that initiates this complex but extremely beneficial process for sound sleep and overall well-being. It's as if a person addresses their anxious mind. Everything is fine, master. There's no danger. Relax. You can sleep. And the mind, with due persistence, responds to this call. Let's consider another example, illustrating what happens if one doesn't do this. This is about a woman, let's call her Anna Petrovna, a longtime acquaintance of the author from that same clinic. She is a woman of outstanding intellect and deep erudition, formerly a head teacher at one of the city's best schools, where she is still remembered and respected for her extensive knowledge, strict discipline, and exceptional fairness. Well, she also started waking up every night at exactly 4 a.m., as if by an unspoken signal from an invisible alarm clock. But what did she do instead of using this time for her own healing? The moment she opened her eyes, her thoughts immediately returned to her professional duties. She mentally constructed detailed lesson plans for the next day, checked the notebooks of negligent students' test papers, looked for mistakes, assigned failing grades, and scolded them for their laziness and carelessness. Or, even worse, she would frantically plan the seemingly endless day ahead down to the smallest detail. Okay, wake up at 7, then a quick breakfast. Don't forget to take my blood pressure pills. Then I absolutely must run to the Social Security office to inquire about travel benefits. Then make it to the market for fresh herbs for borscht before they're all gone. Then stop by the pharmacy for Corvalol for neighbor Granny Mania. She was complaining about her heart again. And my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren are coming in the evening. That means I need to bake her signature cabbage and egg pies, the ones from my old mother's recipe that little Vanya adores, and prepare the dough in advance so it rises. The deeper and more detailed she delved into these plans, the more her oppressive inner anxiety intensified, a hopeless premonition of being unable to cope with all the tasks. She felt that she, an elderly and not very healthy woman, simply would not have the physical energy to complete this whirlwind of activities. By morning, she was exhausted, like a lemon squeezed dry, completely drained spiritually, though she hadn't even physically gotten out of bed yet. How could there be any talk of falling back asleep? By dawn, her arterial pressure reached critical levels, and each new day greeted her with medication and a depressed mood. Yet, how she could have acted completely differently, and the outcome, one can say with certainty, would have been radically different. She would have sunk into a deep, peaceful sleep. Reader, perhaps now, as you absorb these lines, you bitterly recognize in these narratives a reflection of your own life or the fates of your loved ones, your parents. Have you or your relatives experienced such arduous nights when, instead of much desired rest and replenishment of vital forces, a person encountered only a new dose of tormenting experiences and all-consuming fears? However, let us return to our golden hour and the techniques capable of bringing salvation. So, a person, through a small act of will, forced themselves to smile and immerse themselves in waves of pleasant, warming memories. What to do next? Then, from your entire exhausted heart, from your entire soul yearning for peace, mentally offer sincere gratitude, as if confessing. Give thanks for all the good things you have or have had in your life. Even if, at first, it seems there is absolutely nothing to be grateful for, that life hasn't worked out, and only darkness and despair prevail. This is a lie. It is merely the whisper of anxiety. Look closer. Express gratitude for having a roof over your head. Your own, perhaps modest, but separate apartment or room. For how many in this world live in barracks or are entirely deprived of their own shelter? Offer gratitude for waking up today, for breathing, for contemplating this world, for listening to the birds singing outside your window. While for some, this day never came. Give thanks for having children, grandchildren, even if they are far away now or don't always find time to call or visit. They exist, they are alive. They are your flesh and blood, your continuation of the lineage. Give thanks for each new day lived, regardless of its nature. For a cup of hot, fragrant tea or coffee, capable of warming you in the morning and giving you a little vitality. For an old, time-worn family photograph in a dusty album, where a person is captured young, beautiful, and carefree happy. For favorite book on the shelf, reread dozens of times, each time discovering something new. For the first ray of morning sun that timidly peeked through the window, if it has already appeared and dispelled the night's darkness. Believe me, the more reasons a person finds around and within themselves for sincere gratitude, even the smallest ones, the more powerful and profound the healing effect will be for their soul and, consequently, for their sleep. It's like those piggy banks that used to be in almost every home. Clay or porcelain shaped like a funny cat with a narrow slot on its back, or a plump pink pig. Each penny dropped into it, each 10-kopeck coin, seemed utterly insignificant on its own, such a tiny amount. However, time passed, and when that piggy bank was ceremoniously broken before some significant holiday or long-awaited vacation, a very decent, tangible sum accumulated inside, with which one could acquire something truly desired and valuable. Similarly here, every tiny spark of heartfelt gratitude, ignited in that pre-dawn silence, can kindle within a person a true, life-giving fire of inner peace and inexhaustible vitality, which will warm them and help them sink back in a healing, restorative sleep. When the author of these lines was still a very young, inexperienced general practitioner in that old District Polyclinic No. 5, located in a beautiful but already dilapidated merchant's mansion with high stucco ceilings and perpetually creaking oak floorboards, they had a very old professor in their department, a true luminary of Soviet medicine, Ivan Arkadyevich Zakrevsky. He no longer saw patients due to his advanced age, but sometimes, out of old habit, he would visit the young, beardless interns during their morning 5-minute meeting to share his vast experience. And once he uttered a phrase that the author probably remembered for the rest of his life. "My dears," he said, paternally tapping his thin, arthritic fingers on an old, pre-war stethoscope. "We, doctors, primarily treat the body, write prescriptions for pills, prescribe injections and procedures, sometimes even cut with a scalpel. But who, tell me, will treat the troubled human soul? Who will heal its wounds?" The professor continued, emphasizing that the vast majority of chronic diseases, especially in older people, originate precisely there, from old, unwept grievances, from deeply hidden guilt, from a complete inability to enjoy simple things, from exhausting fear of the future, of loneliness and infirmity. Official medicine, to my great regret, hardly deals with this. It has neither the time nor the methods for it. And that's a shame, a great shame. And he was, it must be admitted, 1,000 times right. This simple, accessible practice of sincere gratitude is that priceless, unpatented medicine for the suffering soul. It cannot be bought in any pharmacy, not even the most expensive foreign one. But with regular application, it is capable of working true, astonishing miracles, and first and foremost, restoring healthy, sound sleep. This is like a bridge of time that a person builds between their difficult but cherished past and their future, which can still be made bright and peaceful. Remember that special, poignant feeling when, as a child or teenager before New Year's, with a pounding heart and hands trembling with impatience, you would take down the treasured cardboard box of Christmas tree ornaments from the mezzanine or an old grandmother's chest. Each of these fragile, sometimes slightly faded ornaments, a glass astronaut in a spacesuit, a rosy-cheeked cotton Santa Claus with a bag of gifts, a cardboard house with a snow-covered roof, a painted shiny ball, held an entire story, an entire bygone era, a whole sea of memories. And by gently touching them with your fingertips, you were transported as if by a time machine to those magical, unique moments of your childhood when the world seemed so vast, kind, and full of wonders. Similarly, through deep, sincere gratitude for all the good things that were in the past and are in the present, a person builds a reliable, strong bridge to their bright, calm, peaceful future. They silently, yet very clearly, tell the universe or God, or their own soul, whatever they believe in, "I see and value all the good that I have. I'm open to new, good, healing things." And the universe, in the author's experience, always always responds to such a sincere, heartfelt message. And one of its first gifts will be deep, restorative sleep. Now, the reader at least begins to understand the incredible, almost magical power hidden in these seemingly simple, even primitive at first glance, actions. This is not just some Soviet-era autogenic training, as was fashionable to say in the 70s, when there was no Kasparovsky or Chumak with their mass healing sessions on TV, and people were treated with whispers from old women healers and clippings from Health magazine. This is deep, meaningful, very intimate work with one's own inner state, with one's soul. And a person cannot even imagine what amazing, sometimes completely unexpected discoveries and positive changes in their well-being and sleep quality this can lead to if practiced regularly, every time they wake up at night. For next, another equally important step awaits them. A step that will allow them not just to calm down and tune into a positive wave to fall back asleep, but to truly consciously shape what they have so long and so passionately desired for themselves in their life. The main thing now is to firmly lay this unshakable foundation of inner peace, deep relaxation, and heartfelt gratitude. Without such a reliable foundation, any house, even the most beautiful and outwardly strong, will not stand long. It will inevitably crack at the first storm of life. And this is where we come to a very important understanding of how our everyday, often completely unconscious habits of thinking and behavior can either actively help us in this good cause of restoring healthy sleep, or, conversely, cunningly destroy all our best and most sincere endeavors at the very root. This knowledge is especially important in order to avoid those common, annoying mistakes that, unfortunately, negate all previous efforts and return us to the abyss of insomnia and despair. So, my dears, we have, I believe, laid a very important foundation. We have learned to meet this unwelcome nocturnal awakening not with fear and despair, but with a smile and gratitude. We have realized how important it is to shift our thoughts from worries to bright memories, to calm the agitated nervous system and give the body a clear signal. Everything is fine, you can sleep on. This in itself is a huge achievement that will help many significantly improve the quality of their sleep and regain the joy of peaceful nights. But that's not all. Our task is not only to fall back asleep, but also to ensure that each new day is filled with meaning, joy, and health. And here, another truly magical tool comes to our aid, one that becomes available precisely in these quiet pre-dawn hours. We will talk about how to make a wish correctly, or in more modern terms, how to form your positive intentions. Don't be alarmed. This is not some mysticism or sorcery, although the results sometimes seem miraculous. In Soviet times, do you remember that wonderful film Old Man Hodabik, where the pioneer Folka Kostelkov, with the help of a magical genie, got everything he wanted? Well, our brain in these pre-dawn hours, when it is in a special semi-sleep, relaxed state, scientists call this alpha or theta rhythm, becomes somewhat like that omnipotent Hodabik. It is very receptive to vivid images and positive affirmations. During the day, when we are burdened with tasks and worries, our inner critic, our skeptical mind, constantly puts spokes in our wheels. That's impossible. You won't succeed. Don't even dream. But at night, when this critic slumbers, we can directly address our subconscious, that part of it responsible for our hidden resources and capabilities. And what should one do after calming down, expressing gratitude, and filling oneself with the light of pleasant memories? You need to very clearly, very vividly, and colorfully imagine what you most want for yourself in the near future. Specifically for yourself, not for your children, not for your grandchildren. We think about them constantly anyway, but for your own health, peace of mind, and small joys. Perhaps you dream of your joints no longer hurting, so you can walk in the park without pain again, or tend to your beloved seedlings in the garden, which you once received from the factory for many years of labor. Or you want your blood pressure to normalize, so you no longer depend on a handful of pills every morning. Or maybe you simply dream of your grandchildren visiting more often, and your home being filled with their ringing laughter again, like in the days when they were very small and you baked them your famous pancakes from your great-grandmother's recipe. Imagine it as if it has already happened. See yourself healthy, energetic, smiling. Feel lightness in your body, joy in your soul. If you dream of good relationships with loved ones, imagine sitting at the same table, laughing, sharing news, and the house filled with an atmosphere of love and understanding. Don't just think about it, but actually watch a movie in your imagination with all the details, sounds, smells, and sensations. The more vivid and emotional this picture, the stronger the signal to your subconscious. And most importantly, allow no doubts. Believe that it is possible, that you are worthy of it. When the author was just starting his medical practice in that old clinic he mentioned, they had an amazing paramedic working there, Pyotr Ignatievich. He had been through the entire war, had many wounds, but was always incredibly optimistic. He often addressed his young colleagues, "Guys, the strongest pill is right here." And he tapped his forehead. "As you set your mind, so it will be." I lay in the hospital after a severe injury. The doctor said he won't make it. But every night I imagined walking through my native village, through a field of rye, with the sun shining and my wife meeting me. And I pulled through because I really wanted to live and believed it would happen. This is the true power of positive intention. And now modern science, particularly psychoneuroimmunology, convincingly confirms that our thoughts, our inner images, directly influence our physical state and the effective functioning of our immune system. Now let's look at several specific step-by-step actions that will help solidify this result and turn this practice into a good habit. First, immediately after waking up at night, do not move or open your eyes. You must force yourself to smile. Second, turn to pleasant memories. For 5 to 10 minutes, immerse yourself in the warmest, brightest memory from your life, experiencing it with all your senses. Third, express sincere gratitude. Mentally give thanks for all the good things in your life right now, finding at least 5 to 7 reasons for appreciation. Fourth, begin to form an intention. Clearly and vividly imagine the positive change you desire. For example, good health, peaceful sleep, joyful events. Imagine that it has already happened and experience those positive emotions. Fifth, ensure peaceful falling asleep. After this, do not analyze or wait for an immediate result. Simply allow yourself to relax and fall back asleep. Very often, sleep comes on its own, easily and imperceptibly. You know, my dears, life after 60, 70, and even 80 is not a sentence or a passive waiting for the end. It can be a time of deep wisdom, inner peace, a time dedicated to oneself, to one's soul. And how we live these years largely depends on us, on our inner attitude. Yes, our health is no longer what it was in youth, when after a shift at the factory, we would still run to dances at the community center to the sound of the radio. Yes, resentments and losses have accumulated. But it is within our power to change our attitude towards this, within our power to transform these night hours from a time of torment into a time of healing and creation. This simple method, which comes to us from the depths of centuries from our wise ancestors, and which today finds convincing confirmation in modern science, is your personal key to peaceful sleep, good health, and inner balance. Use it for your well-being. Don't wait for Monday or a new month. Start today, this very night, and you will see how gradually, step by step, your life will begin to change for the better. You will start getting enough sleep again. You will have the strength and desire to live, to rejoice in each new day. You will once again feel like the full master of your life, not its hostage. Believe me, it is possible because you deserve it.